Hey everybody, what's up? Stingray again, and this is not a redstone video, but a building related video. So this is a basic terraforming tutorial with VoxelSniper and WorldEdit. You will be able to use this tutorial both if you're creating new worlds completely from scratch and if you are cleaning up areas like this one. So the premise is, say a friend of mine came along and was like, hey, I cleared up this area a bit, there were some houses here, and I basically removed them all, and now this left with all of this mess. So could you please clean this up, terraform this a bit to make it look like there was basically never anything here, right? Don't care about the vegetation, right? We won't talk about the vegetation in this video, right? Don't care about the vegetation, but can you just clean up the terrain for me? So if you take a look at this, here we basically use WorldEdit to remove a bunch of blocks like logs and stone and whatnot, and really left this whole mess here which will need to be cleaned up. Obviously, we want to get rid of the farm here as well. Over here, he basically used a airbrush to delete the buildings, which was pretty effective, but left these ugly craters which will need to be cleaned up. And then here, he basically got lazy and just selected everything with WorldEdit and deleted it, so here we'll actually need to build up some terrain from scratch. So let's go. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create uniformity, aka replacing everything that we want to edit with a single type of block. Because if everything is one block, that makes it a lot easier to then work with it afterwards. If you are starting from scratch, then obviously you don't need this step because, nothing is pretty uniform. So what we'll do for that is we'll use WorldEdit and we'll take any tool except the wooden axe, right? Because the wooden axe is obviously the default WorldEdit one. So any tool that's not the wooden axe, select it, and then we'll do /BR sphere because we want to create spheres. And then the material, which for us will be stone, and the radius will be 5. So now we've equipped this brush, and if I click around, you can see it creates stone spheres. Now obviously we don't want to create complete stone spheres, we only want to replace existing blocks, we don't want to replace any air blocks. So let me undo that real quick. And what we'll do for that is we will add a mask. So with the item selected, we'll do /mask, and then with the mask you basically just tell it what blocks to replace. So if I do dirt, it would only replace dirt. If I do dirt, grass without a space there, then it would only replace dirt and grass. Now we want to replace everything that's not air, right? So what we will do is we'll do exclamation mark, which stands for not, and then air. So everything that's not air. And if we now click around, you can see it didn't replace any of the air blocks, it only replaced everything else. And this now allows us to basically just click around and thereby replace everything with stone. You'll see this looks really jagged and not what you might expect. This is because it replaces everything that is not air, right? That also includes here the plants, right? So this creates a lot more terrain than you would probably expect, which is something that you need to keep in mind. Obviously, it also includes all the plants and walls, and over here we have things like these barely visible blocks from this height at least, like the fences and some buttons and stuff. All of that will be replaced with full stone blocks, which will of course create this jagged mess which looks really terrible, but we don't really care about that. What we care about is that everything is uniform, everything is one block, and well, we can then work with that way better. So yeah, let me just really quickly do this and we'll see each other afterwards. Okay, with everything now being one uniform block, we can start the actual terraforming. The first thing we want to do is we want to fill in this huge gap here. This is like actually building up some terrain from scratch, and you have multiple options for that. The first option, this is especially useful when you're working with huge pieces of terrain, is to just select the base here with your WorldEdit wand, then expand the selection upwards as much as you want. Let's just do 5 for an example, and up, and then we'll just set stone. And there we go, and you can really create some huge areas with that, right? If you're going to do some rough terraforming. For smaller things, and this is kind of a small thing, it makes more sense to use brushes. So one option that we have is to just use another tool, once again, do brush, sphere, stone, because that's our base material, and our radius will just be 5 again. This time, I'm not applying a mask, and you can see I can simply click around and create terrain that way. We can achieve pretty much the same effect with VoxelSniper here. Now, VoxelSniper works with brushes, just like the WorldEdit brushes that we've just used before. It works differently in that it doesn't bind brushes to items like WorldEdit does, but instead it has one global setting for the brush, and then you use the gunpowder and the arrow to use your brush in the world. So what we'll do is we'll do /D first of all. This really just resets the entire VoxelSniper settings to default. You generally just want to do this whenever you aren't sure as to what your settings are. You just want to make sure that you have exactly the settings that you want to have. Right? So this resets everything to default. What this does is if I click somewhere with the arrow, you can see it basically just snipes out a few blocks. Right? It really just snipes out one block with each click. And what I can do is, for example, we can say /V for voxel, and that sets the material. So I can do /V sand, and now I'm not sniping around with air, I'm sniping around with sand. And this is where the difference between the arrow and the gunpowder comes into play, because if I do the same thing with the gunpowder, it doesn't replace the block that I'm looking at, but like the block to the sides that I'm looking at, right? Like when you're placing a block. So if I click on the top of this block, it will place a block on top. If I look on the side of this block, it will place a block to the side, and so on. If we're using the ball brush, which is the equivalent to the WorldEdit sphere, then this is all it does, right? It really just defines the center of the ball that you're placing. So, getting rid of all of this. What we want to do next is we want to set our brush type to ball, because at the moment it's set to snipe, which means a single block, which isn't exactly helpful. So we'll simply do B, that /B basically edits our brush. And the type will be B for ball. So doing that, it's now set to brush type ball. And the next thing that we want to do is we want to set the radius, so we'll do B and then a number for the radius, in my case just 5. If I now click around, you can see it creates a sphere like that. Obviously, undo that because we want to use stone, and now we can click around with this. And here you can see the difference again. If I place it like that, we get that, and if I place it like this, you can see it's one block higher. Right? That's all the difference that the arrow and the gunpowder do with brush like the ball brush. So now we can simply fill this in here. And that's that. Okay, now that we've got the base of the terrain done, it's time to make it look like actual nice terrain and not some apocalyptic wasteland. Right? So what we'll do for that is we'll use VoxelSniper again, this time using the Erosion brush. So the Erosion brush can erode stuff away like real erosion, right? So what we'll do for that is we'll do B, E, right, setting our brush type to E for erosion, and we'll give it a subtype. There are 3 subtypes. There's melt, like that. There is fill, and there is smooth. Now we'll set it to melt. Melt, as you can imagine, will melt stuff away. So we'll set BE melt. Our brush size is still set to 5, right? So now if I just click around with the arrow somewhere, you can see it just melts this stuff away. Now, interestingly, if we use the gunpowder and I click around, you can see it fills stuff up. Because what happens is that the melt and the fill brush are obviously opposites, right? The melt brush will melt stuff away while the fill brush will fill things in. And whichever one you select, that will be applied to the arrow, and the other one will always be applied to the gunpowder, which is incredibly useful because that of course means that you don't always have to switch between them to get to melt stuff away at some places and then fill stuff up in other places. And we can use this to create our basic terrain. So right here, where we filled this in with the box and the stuff here, you can just melt this away a little bit, just to make it look a little more smooth like that. Right here, we probably want to fill this in a bit more, and we can basically just get rid of all of these small artifacts from when we replaced everything with stone. Right here, for example, this is one of the basements of one of the houses. I'm just going to click on this once to get rid of the roof, and then I'm going to fill this in with the fill tool. Same with these craters here, I'm just going to fill these in, right? Just like that. Over here, this is of course also the artifact of the other house. I'm just going to click here with the erosion tool to get rid of all of this. And if I remember correctly, there is a basement below, and I did remember correctly. So opening that up with the erosion, with the melt brush, and then filling it in with the fill brush, right? And then here, this is the remains of a small river, right? We're just going to fill this in. Since this is such a small thing, it doesn't really matter. The smaller river you would obviously want to fill in properly, but with this small thing here, it doesn't really matter at all. So that's this, right? Over here we can once again use the melt brush a bit to get rid of this stuff. And you basically just want to continue doing this until you get the rough shape. Now this is still all incredibly jagged, as you can see, and we'll get rid of that jaggedness later on. But we're really just creating the basic shape of the terrain. Alright, so with all the melting and filling done, you can really see that you can't see anything anymore in regards to the stuff that was here before. Right, all the buildings are gone, all the small little river remains, all the bridges, everything is really just completely gone. So this is starting to look like terrain where nothing was, but it's still really rough and really coarse and not like a smooth little open field that we want. So what we'll do is we'll use the smooth erosion brush that I just talked about briefly. So be smooth, and our stuff is still set. So with the smooth erosion brush, as the name suggests, it smoothes things out. So if I click around, you can see it really just smoothes out the terrain like this. And that really gets rid of all the jaggedness, all the jagged edges here like that. And this is what really makes it come together and what really makes it, look like actual natural terrain and not like just a bunch of terraformed stuff. Now, for some of the final touches in terms of relief, we're going to use yet another VoxelSniper brush, and that is called Blend Ball. So we'll do BB for Blend Ball, and what the Blend Ball does is, with the arrow, it basically does the same thing as the smooth brush, aka smoothing out the terrain. However, it uses a slightly different algorithm, and it's slightly more aggressive. So if I click around, you can see here it smoothes out some of the places that the smooth brush just refused to touch, basically. And this can really help you get some of the final touches in there, some of the final jagged edges that you want to get rid of, and can make can allow you to actually get some really smooth terrain. Now the thing with the blend ball is you can use it. You can use only the blend ball, right? Skipping the step with the smooth erosion brush and only using the blend ball to smooth out the terrain. However, if you do that, you will get some really smooth terrain, and sometimes you want to have that, but most of the time you don't, right? Most of the time you want to have some roughness in the terrain, and because of that you would use the smooth brush to do the basic smoothing of the terrain, and then you would only selectively use the blend ball for some of the final touches. Some areas where it's a little too rough for your taste would go over with the blend ball and really just get some details in there, but you would really selectively use it and not over the entire area, because again, then you get a really smooth terrain, which a lot of the times you don't want. Now all that's left to do is covering everything with our surface material, in this case, dirt and grass. But before we can do that, we need to blend it in with the surroundings. Obviously you don't have the problem if you're building up from scratch, but we don't, so we do have that problem. So, as you can see over here, this is pretty much blends in, and the reason is that there's no vegetation here. You can see there's no tall grass, no bushes, nothing. And without really doing anything deliberately to blend it in with the existing area, it's already pretty well blended in. And the reason is that this strip right here, just a few blocks wide, we have covered with stone, right? We've turned everything to stone right at the beginning, but we haven't done anything to it. We haven't done any actual relief terraforming to it. So this really is still mostly the terrain that it was before we started. And then in the middle, it obviously blends in with the rest, because that's what we did with the smooth tools. And so when you don't have vegetation like this, you really most of the time don't have to do anything. You should still probably want to check if everything is really properly blending in, but most of the time you don't have to deliberately do something to make it blend in with the rest of the world, right? But over here, where we have some vegetation, you can see we have this little bit of junk here and some little jaggeds there, and we can't really get rid of it, right? Because we can't, I mean we can, but we probably don't want to go with the smooth tool and go all the way to the border here, because using the smooth brushes on the remaining terrain here would cause a bunch of problems which we really want to avoid, which is why we replaced everything with stone in the first place. And so we can't go in with the smooth tools here to just get rid of it, but if we expand here with the stone and then do the smooth tool, that would work, but then we would have the exact same problem over here where we have some more vegetation. And in this case, what we want to do is really just do it by hand, right? So we'll just go in, punch out a bunch of blocks here, and that gives us our smooth terrain. Now, a lot of people in the beginning, and I know I made that mistake in the beginning, have an aversion to doing things by hand when they are terraforming. Right? Because, I mean, you have the terraform tools. They are for terraforming, right? You're not supposed to terraform by hand, but that notion doesn't really make that much sense. I mean, theoretically, you can think about it, you can terraform by hand, right? You can create an entire world by hand. It would take you a crap ton of time, but it's possible. And the point of terraforming tools is not to enable you to terraform, but to make it possible to terraform large pieces of land in a reasonable amount of time, right? So it's very much possible to terraform by hand, and as long as you don't have huge areas to mess with, it's not really that big of a deal. And we can go down here as well, where we have a bunch of tall grass. You can see we have some jaggedness here. Just get rid of these two blocks, everything is blended in fine. Get rid of that block, get rid of these. These two blocks were really nice, because they were really nicely demonstrated how this was just tall grass. And well, basically just going all around the border and doing this blending in for the entire border between the terraform stuff and the old stuff. Alright, so with a little bit of handwork, we made everything blend in nicely. Obviously, I know what you're thinking. This isn't feasible if you're doing a huge area, right? So, like, this is a pretty small area, and it wasn't really a problem for me to just go around real quick and punch out a bunch of blocks, right? But if you imagine you have an area 10 times the size, then, well, that wouldn't exactly be feasible to go around the border and punching out the blocks like that. And you're right, and because of that, you want to make sure that if you're doing this to a large area, you probably want to get rid of all of the vegetation first before you're converting everything here to stone. And then you won't have blending problems like in the area right there where we just didn't have any vegetation. So here we didn't have any problems with blending it in. And if you have a really large area, then you want to do that. Right, you want to get rid of the vegetation so you don't have any problems with blending in the new terrain with the existing terrain. But for a small area like that, it really doesn't matter that much, and it's really not a big problem. Just walk around and just punch out a bunch of blocks to make everything nice and smooth. Alright, so all that's left to do now is creating the overlay. For this one, I decided I would go with 2 layers of dirt and then 1 layer of grass on top of that. Or worded differently, that would be dirt going down 3 layers and then grass going down 1 layer. This is important because you want to determine which of your overlay layers goes down the deepest. Because you want to start with that. So for me, that would be dirt with a depth of 3. So to do this, we're going to use VoxelSniper again. So we're going to set our brush type to overlay, so be over, that's the overlay brush, and then we're going to give it the depth. So we're going to say D3, right? The D is just there for reasons, don't ask me. And then the 3 is obviously the depth that we want to go for. So that would be 3 for the dirt. And okay, now we also want to set our voxel or material. So that would be /v dirt, and we're gonna give it a radius of 10, for example. Right now, with the overlay tool, it's not a ball. That is a cylinder, right? It projects completely, like it projects straight down and overlays anything that it finds, all the way down to bedrock level. However, interestingly, it starts at the layer that you click at, right? That's the top layer. So if I click here with my arrow, you can see it overlaid everything here, creating this nice little circle, but it ignored everything above here. And this is especially useful for things like beaches and cliffs, and we'll see that in a moment. So all I want to do now is really just click around, and actually you don't have to click, you just hold right click and then just paint around like that. So we're just going to do that for the entire area. Alright, and here you can see how it comes in really nice and useful, because what we can do is we can simply click here, and maybe we want to go a layer up here, but this means that in this case of this cliff here, I can really go in really close to the cliff, but without actually putting stuff on the cliff, where I probably don't want any overlay, right? So this is really useful in this case, and again, for beaches and stuff, it's also incredibly useful. Alright, now that we got our dirt overlay done, we want to do the grass. So what we'll do is we'll again do B over D, and this time 1, because the grass should of course only go 1 layer deep. And of course we'll set our voxel to grass. And again, we'll just paint around. Now in a case like this, where you've gone to a specific point with the previous overlay and with the next overlay, you don't want to go any further, usually. What you would do is you would start out quite far, right, like here, and then you would slowly creep in so that it's layer by layer replaces the stuff over there. And that really allows you to get in exactly where you want it. Alright, and with that, the base of our overlay is done. Now, if you want a complete grass plane or something like this, then you are done right now. But if you want to have something like over here, where you have a bit of randomization, right? So a little bit of a few splotches of dirt or puzzle or whatever splashed over the whole surface, then there are a few techniques that we can use. One option would be to take the WorldEdit one, select an area. I'm not going to select the whole thing, I'm just going to select an area like this for demonstration purposes. And now what we want to do is we want to / replace. And now what we want to replace is our top layer, so that would be grass. And what do we want to replace it with? Well, that would be, for example, 90% grass, and 5% dirt, and 5% dirt colon 1. Dirt colon 1 being coarse dirt, right? So do that, and you can see we have all these patches around. You can just select the entire area, do it once, be done with it. Downside, of course, is that you always have straight edges with it, which, depending on your situation, may not really work for you. The other option would be to use brushes. So what we could do is, again using WorldEdit brushes, doing /BR sphere, and this time we're not going to use stone, of course. This time we're going to use our pattern. So 90% grass, 5% dirt, 5% dirt colon 1. And then, of course, a radius of 5. Right? And now, of course, we only want to replace the top layer of grass, so /mask and grass. So it only replaces grass. And now if I click around, you can see it creates splotches all over the place. Now, the thing with this particular mask is that we only selected grass, right? This brush will only work on grass, and what that means is if I click on the same spot multiple times, you can see it creates pretty much only dirt. And the reason is that when I click the first time, this area will now have 90% grass and 10% other stuff. If I click on it again, because we are only replacing the grass, not the stuff that we put in there otherwise, we'll now have something like, 81% grass and the rest dirt, and now again, we are once again decreasing the amount of grass, right? And this will inevitably cause the whole thing to become more dirt than anything else. And sometimes you do want this, right? So if you would be like, okay, I'm spreading this out here, so I'm having a few spread out splotches here, but over here, I don't know, I would have a path or something, right? So I would have do it a bit more, so the density of dirt would be more. Right? So that can be a valid approach to use if you want to be able to vary like that. If you don't want to do it, we would have to set a different mask, and specifically, we would set our mask to everything that we set our surface to. So grass, no space there, grass, dirt, and dirt colon 1. And with this, if I now click around, you can see it switches around all the time, but it also replaces the dirt and the coarse dirt, thereby keeping the ratio of dirt of grass to dirt to coarse dirt. And yeah, that would be the other option. So yeah. Now, if you're wondering about the server that I'm on and or the resource pack that I'm using, this server is the Diverging Realms Minecraft server. It is currently a showcase and building server, so you can check around the main world, see what we from the build team are doing, and you can go to the plot world and build yourself, and if you're good enough, maybe join our team. The resource pack is called Medifault, and it is the official server resource pack for this server. I will post the links to both the Minecraft server and our Discord server in the description down below. And if you want to have the resource pack for yourself, you can also find the download link to the resource pack on our Discord server. So yeah, check that out if you feel like it. We would love to see some of you on the server. And apart from that, you know, like, subscribe, comment, or don't if you don't feel like it. I'm not gonna force you, but you know the deal. See you next time. Goodbye.